Yeah, welcome to SMX Insider, previewing round 2 of the Pro Motocross Championship and the 19th round of the SuperMotocross World Championship. We're headed to Hangtown, but we have to look back. Jason Weigandt and Jason Thomas, and the data says that Hunter Lawrence and Chase Sexton were at least close to Jett Lawrence. The undefeated streak continues, but JT, was that something?
I do think it was a challenge. I don't think Jett felt all that comfortable. And listen, those guys were close, especially Chase Sexton in Moto 2. He was closing down on Jett. But in reality, when you think about what 2023 looked like, it was virtually the same thing. Now, we didn't know that Jett would go on and be 22-0 in 2023, so we were unsure of what that dynamic would look like. But a year later, we know that Jett is comfortable managing a gap. Second, 2 seconds, no problem. So as much as I want to say, yes, they're onto something here, we have 22 prior motos in 2023 that said this is really nothing. This is just what Jett does. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here and if Chase Sexton can turn this into something here in 2024.
Now, one big difference for Hangtown, we hope, is that Chase Sexton simply races the event, because last year he got injured before round 2 and wasn't there. So he put pressure on Jett at round 1 last year and then wasn't able to capitalize on that at all. So him just showing up alone and then the inclusion of Hunter Lawrence into the class, again, maybe we have something. On this episode, we'll unpack a lot of the 450 stories and the 250 class. There was a penalty for Tom Vialle. There was not a penalty for Haiden Deegan. Both went off the track. Deegan ends up with a 1-1. And what does that mean going forward? We'll try to figure that all out on this episode. But let's get Jett Lawrence's own take on round 1. James Stewart and I had a chance to interview him straight off the podium at Fox Raceway. Here is the big interview. I want to let you talk to James because he says, the moto win streak, it's in jeopardy. Golf maybe, though. He might have something for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's your day, son. It's your day. We're going to talk about it. I said it a while. Let's just bask in the present right now. It's your day. Good job today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know. I mean, I'm feeling good on the golf course too, James, so we can run at any time.
Look, that's how these kids feel. They feel like they win out here to go on the golf course, but nonetheless, it was a good day around. How was that track, that second moto? Was it really tough?
It was tough, you know, like in a lot of the top section, mid-right, you had those kind of jarring bumps, the acceleration bumps, so you couldn't just come out and gas it and just kind of rail it. It was challenging. Obviously, we'll kind of struggle with suspension all day today. I got a bit of a cold too, that doesn't help. But yeah, it's a challenging track. Pa's always been like this. It's always a little different each year. This year's a little different from last. I think last year was a little deeper.
Yep.
But no, still challenging. Two ones, and no, it's good to keep going. At least I can finally say I'm 24-0, respectively. So yeah.
I got a question. When Hunter was close to you and then you look back, it was Chase. Did you know at any point, or did Chase kind of surprise you when he made the pass around Hunter and he closed in on you? How was that?
I seen him at the start of the race. I knew he was there in third or whatever it was. So I knew he's going to be there all moto. And yeah, kind of midway, I think it was, Hunter made a push. I'm guessing I was kind of dropping the pace down a bit. And all right, I better get going now because Chase is probably pressuring Hunter. And then, yeah, 2 laps later, I see Chase there. So I'm like, oh, well, Hunter got past. It sucks. But got to keep my head down because, you know, Chase from last year, you know, he doesn't give up until that checker flag's going. So, so yeah, it was good. I just kind of kept my momentum going and just tried to focus on myself, hitting my marks, because it's very easy to kind of slip up here, I could say.
Hey, Jett, there's an old tradition. We call it the Supercross hangover. Whoever wins the 450 Supercross title, especially if it goes down to the last round, doesn't always have his best stuff at Pro Motocross. I don't think we were talking about that with you because you've been so successful outdoors. But did you feel any of that? Was there a little bit maybe off today because of everything you had to manage going up to 2 weeks ago?
I think it was a little bit of a slower start today to kind of, I didn't get much outdoor testing because I got hurt in between in the break that we were going to test. So, but I mean, we still were able to do good enough to win. So we're happy with that. We're going to go back to the drawing board and try and get even better for next weekend.
How different do you feel coming into this race now that you have all these last season under your belt, coming off the SuperCross Championship? Like, how do you feel when you're racing? Like, is it completely different confidence? Because as I was saying today, you just look like you know what's going to happen. You know you're going to end up towards the front. But I'm curious to see how different it is for you, your mindset being out here compared to last year.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to know what I need to do this year than last year. Last year was kind of still up in the air, you know, like I wasn't quite sure where I was at. But this year, obviously, after the run I had last year, I knew where I had to be. And yeah, obviously our bikes hook up on the start really well, so the start definitely helped a lot. And when you get those starts, it's a lot easier to manage from the front, you know. So we're here, we're feeling good, and we're excited for another 10 rounds to go, so we're going to try and keep these going.
Heck yeah. I love it, kid. You know that. I love it.
Okay, and a big thanks to Jett Lawrence for giving us that time. We were actually rolling through our post-race highlights there, so we had to hang in for 10 or 15 minutes before we could talk to him. So thanks to him for giving us a little extra media time. And here's some other events that he would like to speak to us on the podium from. It's the upcoming schedule. Get your tickets now at Ticketmaster. Again, Hangtown this weekend in Northern California. Then we go to Lakewood, Colorado, outside of Denver the next Saturday. Then High Point, just south of Pittsburgh. A weekend off. Then it's Southwick in Massachusetts, Redbud on the Michigan and Indiana line, Spring Creek in Minnesota, Washougal, Washington. One more break for the stretch run. That's Unadilla in New York, Budds Creek in Maryland, and the championship finale for Pro Motocross at Ironman Raceway. Again, get your tickets. There really is not an experience, I believe, in racing quite like getting close to the podium in Pro Motocross. So take it in person. Okay, 30-second board. Topics in the sport. We have to go all the way back to before round one, media day. So this is terrible. RJ Hampshire, with all this momentum from Monster Energy Supercross 250 West title, breaks his wrist in a crash. I mean, crashes happen. Also, Garrett Marchbanks was part of something that probably should have been preventable, with riders crashing on top of each other on press day. The real question is this, JT. People are going to look at this and say, why are they doing this? Why are they doing press day? It's not really for press. The riders want to ride before the opener, ride their bikes, ride on the track. What's your take on riding Thursday and then the risk that they're taking?
Well, practicing and riding is just a natural part of the sport. You know, unfortunately, injuries come along with that. You know, the tough part, I got to speak with these riders at the opening round press conference maybe 2 hours before these crashes, and everybody was so optimistic, ready for a new championship, and then you see this unfold. And it's just heartbreaking, but we know people are going to get injured. It is a part of this sport. It is, you know, arguably the most difficult sport in the world, and this is one of the more nasty aspects of that. So these guys will be back. You know, they'll go home, heal up, and yeah, we'll see them more, you know, sooner rather than later. But when these things happen, it creates opportunity. You know, we have this fill-in ride situation that's happened in our sport for years, and riders like Ty Masterpool in this scenario grab this opportunity. We lost Cameron McAdoo and Seth Hammaker on, I believe, Tuesday before the event. Well, guess what? Ty Masterpool got to practice on the motorcycle on Friday and decided, yep, I'm in. I'm going to race this series on a Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki. And it didn't go particularly well, but I do think there will be brighter days ahead, and he showed some real promise, Weech.
Well, maybe a little too much for me. I was getting really, really excited. You see that crash there in the first moto. Luckily, he did get up. But the reason Ty Masterpool does not have a great bike when he's always stuck in this privateer void is because his Supercross results don't warrant it. This magical scenario where he gets on one of the best bikes in the series where he's really good, motocross, I was getting very fired up. It's the opportunity I think he and many of us have been waiting for to see. And then he starts the first moto fourth, and I'm like, what if he's a podium guy right off the start, gets better and better on this bike, and he's battling for the title? Okay, maybe I got ahead of myself, but I cannot overstate how good he is riding-wise in motocross, not supercross, and he's on a good bike. So keep watching that going forward. History is kind of the same story we talked about in Supercross. We have another brother 1-2 with the Lawrences. This did happen once before, technically, in this championship with the Jones brothers, Gary and Dwayne, but that's 1973. It's just a completely different phase of where the AMA National Motocross Championship was back then. To do this against this kind of competition, I don't care how many times it happens. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, this is really special, and I don't know, you know, it may be another 50 years before we see something like this again, to be this level of talent, to both be healthy at the same time and to be peaking at the same time where they're capable of this type of result. Think about the stars that have to align for something like this. And to me, the real winner of that entire dynamic is Darren Lawrence, the father, right? And Emma, their mother too. Like, think about how proud they have to be and the effort that they've gone to get their two children to the top of the sport, 1 and 2 in the premier class at the opening round of Pro Motocross. That is, that's truly something special. And, you know, speaking of that though, I thought James Stewart did a fantastic job of breaking down the differences in how these riders want their motorcycles to work.
Yeah, when I'm looking at Jett's bike, and you can tell by the rear fender, it's up, and then you notice that the rear wheel is moving, and the fenders, it's moving as well, but the rear wheel is working, where when you see Chase's motorcycle, it seems like the rear wheel is hanging up in the actual fender, like the whole bike is picking up.
He was watching Chase Sexton and Jett Lawrence battle it out, and their motorcycles really were working differently, and that allowed them to have both strengths and weaknesses around that Fox Raceway course. And you were wondering who would win out, which one of them would find a way to pass the other. But yes, the changes, and just I think this led to why Chase Sexton wanted to move to Red Bull KTM. He wanted a different direction in how his motorcycle operated, but it really did play out visually. And yeah, that's the upside of having someone so talented and so insightful like James Stewart in the booth with you, Leach, to break down that difference.
To try to make it as simple as possible, he was seeing how quick the rear suspension was reacting on Jett's bike, but a lot of riders don't like that. But James thinks coming out of corners, it can be faster, and Chase had more of that dead feeling. And JT, you've talked about it, many have. Riders hate when that back end is kicking them up. Some other riders who have to be happy with their motorcycles, they're all guessing going into round one. Let's run through what I'll call the others. We talked a lot about Hunter, Chase, Jett, but let's start there in Plessinger, back from injury. He was on fire first couple laps of Moto 1. Dylan Ferrandis, though, how do we interpret that? I think you and I are with Ferrandis. Thinks he can beat anybody. He didn't podium. To me, that's a disappointment for him. He'll get better as it goes. Malcolm Stewart, great job coming back. Justin Barsha, Jason Anderson really did well coming through traffic. But I want to talk about the Ferrandis piece. He's got to fancy himself as a guy that can win races, right?
I do think he looks at this series that way. Now, in his heart of hearts, I think he wonders, can he beat Jett over the course of 22 motos straight up? You know, but we know this sport, things happen. Motorcycles have mechanical difficulties, injuries happen. But everyone else, I think Ferrandis sees himself as their equal or better. You know, he was the 2021 450 Pro Motocross champion, and I think he can get back there on this Honda. He believes that deep down. So he gave away some points, had a couple crashes on Saturday, but big picture, long term, I think he believes that he can be a real player in this series.
Okay, now we get into maybe the hottest topic of all, which is penalties. Going to get Mike Pelletier, the director of racing for the AMA, on here. In a nutshell, we had Tom Vialle penalized for going off track in the first 250 moto. You'll see it right here. And this was a one position penalty, JT. You think this jump might have had something to do with it?
Yeah, it's hard not to think that the optics of him doubling back onto the racetrack didn't play a role. And then you see the other here, Haiden Deegan goes around. He kind of takes a look over, and just, I think the lack of acceleration about right there, you know, where you can see his body language, he checks up a little bit. I think things like that make all the difference in the world.
Okay, well, let's let Mike Pelletier come on here to explain why one rider was penalized and one rider was not. And now joined by the AMA's Mike Pelletier. I know you were working really late after the race to try to sort it out with Haiden Deegan, and we'll get into the specifics of each incident. But first, just explain, who is the group that helps decide penalties or no penalties like this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Leach. And you know, there's a panel that we created quite a few years ago. We call it race direction. So I have a race direction team. It's more of a committee based when it comes to infractions or reviewing footage. It's myself, Tim McAdams, and a rider rep. That's a fairly new position in the last few years. This past weekend, for example, it was Andrew Short.
Andrew Short, yes. So if people are wondering, it's not just you. You had a ex-professional racer in there weighing in on this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's good every weekend. You know, we also have Jeremy Albrecht that comes in from time to time, Christina Denny. So a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of good perspectives, and Andrew is certainly a benefit this weekend.
Cool.
So let's jump into the nitty gritty of this. Obviously, the first one that we had to cross was Tom Vialle. His off-track excursion in the first moto drew a penalty. And walk us through the thought process and exactly what was, in the end, the reason that he did incur that penalty.
Sure. So I'd like to start by the rule itself. So in Pro Motocross, it's very specific. There's really three main aspects to the rule, right? Did the rider, when he goes off track, did he gain a time or a position advantage? That's one. Did he fail to slow down? That's two. And did he accelerate in an unsafe manner? That's three. So it doesn't mean that all three need to line up for a penalty. There's multiple things we can look at. Those are the main three as it's written in the rule. So in Tom's case, he went off the track as race direction reviewed the footage, realized he never broke from race pace, so he failed to slow down. And when he did come back on, he really didn't assess the situation safely, we felt, that when he came back onto the racetrack, he just jumped back onto the track. So that was a set penalty in the penalty chart. It's a one position penalty. So he was assessed that one position penalty for that situation.
Okay. So now we jump to Moto 2, and I'm sure this is what has kept you from sleeping the last night or two. Haiden Deegan goes off the track as well, right? And we saw riders going off the track throughout the weekend, berms blowing out. This is for the overall win, though, right? All eyes are on Haiden Deegan, and this did not incur a penalty. So walk us through. It seems like this was a subject that was talked about heavily after the race because we had a delay in official results and press conference. But what was the reasoning for him not getting a penalty the way that Tom Vialle did?
Sure. And it's important, I think, for everybody to know we have a lot of footage behind the scenes, not just the broadcast footage, right? So we can pull the drone footage, different camera angles. We go as far back to see his previous lap. You know, how much time did it take him in that section? The segment times, all of that's really dissected. And we try to do that as fast as we can. We do need to clean that up because I think it took too long on Saturday night. But it's important for us to also dissect that and come up with the right decision. So as race direction reviewed that, when Haiden went off the racetrack, he did assess. He looked around. We felt that he did break race pace. And for sure, he lost time based off our footage. So those three areas is what we assessed and decided to no penalty.
So what made that one take so long to figure out?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. And we try to do it as fast as we can, but it's more important. And all the footage we have, all the data points we want to look at, it's important to get it right. And that takes time to do. Now we're working on trying to do that faster. But again, with all the interviews we want to do and all the footage we want to receive and look at and view and assess, that just takes some time. And that's what took so long.
All right. Thanks for the clarity. Maybe a little easier weekend coming up at Hangtown. We'll have to see.
Looking forward to Hangtown.
So penalties aside, look, Haiden Deegan was the best rider at Fox Raceway. So really the question is this, JT. We know the potential he has. Is this shot across the bow and this is the way it's going to be and he's the guy to beat? Or is this just round one of motocross, which often proves zero?
I do think he is the guy to beat. You know, you look at the series last year, he really kind of asserted himself at Washougal, and yes, he had some struggles down the stretch, but I think he sent a message last year, and he's just carrying that through this year. Now, I don't think he's going to go on an undefeated streak or anything. I think Levi Kitchen and others have something to say about that, but he was my favorite going into the championship, and when you take RJ Hampshire out, you take some of these other competitors out, why wouldn't he be the one that we're pointing to be the heir apparent?
Yeah, that's true. Now, we will get more data on Deegan's lap times, Levi Kitchen's lap times, et cetera, when we bring Clinton Fowler on for our SMX Facts segment later. And the fact that Vialle did end up third overall, I don't think Deegan, Kitchen, Vialle podium surprised anyone, but shout out to Chance Hymas, who was in that fight with them all afternoon. He actually technically was third in the first moto after the Vialle penalty. What do you think? Is this more like we should expect going forward for the 48?
Well, I just think it was a breath of fresh air for both he and Honda HRC. You know, this is a coveted ride, and you look at the history and the results of what that motorcycle he's on have done. It was the motorcycle that Jett Lawrence was on. It was the motorcycle that Hunter Lawrence won this very championship on a year ago. So the expectations are high, even though it's only year two for him. So does he need to go win? I would say probably not, but showing signs of life, getting in the battle, turning in fast lap times, those are the things that he needs to show Honda management that are going to give him a new contract, keep him around, and really just the belief that he is going to turn into the rider that they want him to. That's the key thing here. And I thought that was a huge step on Saturday towards that very goal.
Huge step toward other goals. Let's look at some riders that showed up with SMX points on the line. Dean Wilson had long since said he was done racing motocross because his knees are so bad, but he did decide to race this first round. He wanted to be top 10. He just missed it. I think it was 11-15 in his two motos, but helped him add a couple more points to his SMX total. Same thing with Justin Hill, who got a 19th in a moto. But how about our guy Phil Nicoletti, who's starting from 0 because he raced 250s in Supercross? Man, he scored a bunch already.
Yeah, and I think these guys, they learned so much. Justin Hill's brother, Josh Hill, was a big part of that story last season. So it's going to be fun to watch that whole thing play out. Guys going for points where maybe they would be sitting on the couch at home taking it easy. Well, guess what? They're lining up for Pro Motocross because they understand that they need to rack those points up. They want to guarantee themselves one of those 20 spots into the main event. And what I think about is, remember last year at Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, the SMX finale, Ricky Carmichael, Jeff Stanton come riding down the peristyle on those Triumphs, right? And I remember standing there thinking, what is that program going to look like? How difficult is it going to be to jump into an ultra competitive 250 class in 2024? Well, guess what? They have arrived and they have impressed from day one. Jalek Swoll, I thought, had a great Montreal Supercross campaign. And then Joey Savacci coming into this series red hot, almost qualifying fastest. I don't have the right vocabulary to really express how impressed I've been with a first-year effort on a brand new motorcycle. They look like they're a decade deep into this thing, and they look like they're ready to battle for race wins.
Yeah, bummer for Savacci to go down in the first turn of the second moto, and that hurt him big time in points. Because even though this is new, the bike, and him going back to this class for the first time in 8 years, he thinks he can win this title. And if every point counts, that second moto was costly. Yes, the overall look, the performance, the speed. I mean, JT, you saw it. He was a half a lap away from being the fast qualifier on Saturday morning. That's all very impressive. One last topic. Let's just update the SMX points. And this is where it's really going to get interesting when we start putting the motocross scores into the mix. Kitchen's ahead of Deegan because he did score more in Supercross. And they did even drop one West race. That's just that huge first turn crash in Detroit still holding Deegan's point score back. But when you get back to the end of this top 20, Hamaker, McAdoo, where are they going to end up? We go to the 450 class. Dylan Ferrand is probably going to move up, and other riders moving out. This will be wild. The race to not be in the LCQs, JT.
Yeah, this is going to be an ever-changing landscape. These guys from 11 through 20, as you mentioned, those are the ones that are in the danger zone. And I don't mean Haiden Deegan. They're going to be ebbing and flowing because some of them have injuries. Some of them are not racing the Pro Motocross Championship. And there is a laundry list of riders behind them that want to climb into this top 20 and guarantee themselves a spot on that main event starting line when we get to Charlotte. So it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on every single week. And a lot of those names you're seeing in there right now will not be there when we get to North Carolina.
And don't forget, the seeding will be determined by the combined points into the playoffs. For example, the rider who has the most points will have a 3-point edge over the rider second in points when the playoffs begin. And with just 3 races, 3 points could loom large. So Deegan not only wants to win the Pro Motocross title, he wants to outscore Kitchen by enough to be ahead of him in seeding going into SMX playoffs and the World Championship as well. So a lot to watch there. Time for SMX Facts. Let's bring in our statistician, Clinton Fowler. Well, the win streak continues. Yes, they were close to Jett Lawrence, but he keeps on winning. And then you want to point out something even wilder when I was looking through the data. It's not just winning. It's how he's doing it.
Yeah, consecutive laps led, Weege. Absolutely incredible. He has led 97 straight laps. That's 7 motos. And right now, that's the 4th all-time longest since we've got recorded history, which is back to 2004. The thing that's impressive to me is he's got 3 of the 4 longest streaks. And one of those is 97 laps. That's from his rookie season, the beginning of it. So it's not like this is the first time. It's the 3rd time he's done this. JT, I look at this, I can't decide what's more impressive. The fact that he's got 3 of the top 4, or James Stewart in 2008 in his perfect season, 14 motos in a row in 221 laps.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with James Stewart. 221 laps in a row led is unbelievable. You think you have to get every single start, or you have to get to the front by the end of the first lap. That is incredible. That's not saying we shouldn't shine a light on the things that Jett is doing, but that number just blows me away to be that perfect for that long and really have, it's not even like he would have to make a mistake. You're just saying he's not in first place at the end of the first lap that would end the streak. That is something I don't know that'll ever be broken.
You know, you mentioned that Jett had led all these laps from the very first moment he started in the 450 class. I remember going to High Point last year when Ken Roxon decided to show up, and I said, can you at least lead one lap? And he said, well, I hope I lead a lot more than that. And he actually did. He almost won the race. That was about as big a threat as Jett had all last year. And then I see Ken Roxon. We maybe sometimes forget how good he was outdoors in his prime. He's on this list, ironically, with 94 laps led in a row, 1 point.
94 laps, Weege. Absolutely. You know, that was his 2016 season. That was one of those all-time top 5 great seasons. And yep, 94 for the number 94.
Okay, another stat your colleague Brett Smith was showing James Stewart and I at Fox Raceway is the 0 bad days for Jett Lawrence. Please define what a bad day looks like from a statistician standpoint.
Yeah, bad day is losing positions, Weege. Basically, you take the first lap position and you take the last lap position and you compare the two and you see, did you gain positions or did you lose positions? And if you're losing positions, that's a bad day. You don't want to lose positions. And Jett Lawrence, in 24 motos in his career, has yet to lose a position, which is absolutely incredible. Now, it's nuanced because it's first versus last position. The amazing part here is he's only actually lost positions during a moto once. That was back to Mount Morris, that first moto, and he crashed. And Ken Roxon and Garrett Marchbanks got by him. But here's the thing, he got those positions back. So JT, like, he still won the moto. It's absolutely incredible that in 24 motos, he's yet to be legitimately passed by anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the kid is the total package. He has, he's able to handle kind of the pressure when things are going wrong. He can overcome adversity. How many times did we see him last year not quite get the whole shot, but just immediately go to the front on the first lap? So I don't know what it's going to take. It may take some sort of, outside event, something that's out of his control to break this streak, because he just seems to be able to find a way to overcome whatever is thrown at him. Even a crash at High Point wasn't enough to derail this.
Okay, let's move on to the 250s. That squared up as a great battle. Really, Haiden Deegan and Levi Kitchen close in both motos. What are you thinking about there, Clinton?
Yeah, the thing that really sticks out for me initially was hearing what Haiden Deegan said on the podium regarding Levi Kitchen at the end of a race. Those seems like shot fired right there.
I was behind Levi. I know Levi, man. I've trained with him for years. I know, even though he made a mistake, I knew eventually he'd start fading a little, so I was going to get him at the end.
And the reality was, he kind of had a point. At the end of that first moto, Levi's laps did tail off a bit relative to Hayden's. Haiden had a bunch of laps, including a top 10 fastest lap, whereas Levi Kitchen, 24th fastest, 28th fastest, and then obviously mailed it in with 124th fastest lap in the last lap of the moto. So at the end of Moto 1, it did look like Levi maybe lost a little bit of the steam. But you know what, he responded in spades in Moto 2, and he went out and he was first or second fastest in every single lap. Absolutely phenomenal second moto. JT, I look at it, Levi was absolute fastest in both motos. That second moto, he clearly responded to Haiden Deegan's statements on the podium. Who's got the advantage leaving Paolo?
Well, I think both of them are in a really good place. And to me, the most important story for Levi Kitchen was he has found the consistency that he lacked in 2023. When things were going well for Levi, he would get a good start, be out front. He could manage that. But when he didn't get a good start, things weren't going perfectly. He didn't look like he was good enough to bring himself to the front. I believe that's changed. I think even if we go to Hangtown and we see Levi start 12th in the first moto, I think he moves up into the top 5 or the top 3 by the end of that moto. That's something he didn't have a year ago. So to me, however this championship goes, that is a huge step forward in the story of Levi Kitchen, and I think it will make him a true championship contender in 2024.
I'm just looking forward to more of those podium comments. Although I have to say, even with the drama after the race of was Deegan going to get penalized or not, I saw him and Levi broing down and hanging out outside the press tent for like 45 minutes as if nothing had happened. And then Levi even said, whether there's a penalty or not, he beat me straight up. So Levi doesn't seem to be too fired up about all that, but we see how things change sometimes, Clinton, when we get closer to the end of a title. We got a good little setup here, don't we?
We got 10 more rounds, Weege. I think it's going to get fiery here before the end of it for sure.
All right. Well, we'll see what other numbers we can point out after Hangtown. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, Hangtown's up next. JT, I know you've probably raced there a million times, so tell us what you think of with that track.
Well, it's going to be a hot weekend, Weege, so that really strikes me first. These guys are going to have a physical test earlier in the season than they're used to. So we'll see who's fit and who's not. But the track itself is a challenging one, ever-changing traction. They do a lot of work to bring in dirt from outside the facility to try to add traction, but the base is really hard. So some of the same dynamics we saw at Fox Raceway will persist into Hangtown. It's also a track that I don't think Jett Lawrence really feels that comfortable on. So maybe Chase Sexton, maybe a guy like Jason Anderson, who was your 2022 winner, could take advantage of that. But I just think if these guys are going to jump on Jett Lawrence early, it's going to be in a track like Hangtown where it's really difficult to really excel and find your top level of comfort. So I think it's a track that's, in the middle of the road as far as well-liked or not. But yeah, I think the heat is going to be the biggest question mark for a lot of these riders.
Okay. And if you folks want to watch it, we're on the same schedule we were for Fox Raceway. That means 1 o'clock Eastern, Race Day Live. That'll be our 1-hour qualifying show presented by motosport.com. And then motos start at 4 o'clock Eastern time. That's 1 o'clock out in California. And there'll be 4 straight hours of coverage. You can watch all of it on Peacock or the SMX Video Pass outside the United States. That's our show. JT and I will be there along with James Stewart and Katie Osborne covering the races as we continue the Super Motocross World Championship run for 2024. We'll see you in Northern California.